go through track and off track and how we manage that interface, hopefully with a nod towards it being a practical aspect. And I'm going to touch on Carment as well and some of the learning outcomes from that we've brought into maintenance. So I'll be speaking about myself, Carment, and then the track and off-track interface, which is mainly around drainage, vegetation, and boundaries. I spent my whole working life in Scotland, but I'm actually English, so I was in the English education system, and as I know, Scottish geography is not covered very well, so I've given you a start for 10 there about where these places are. So trained in University of Dundee, then the graduate scheme in Network Rail. My first real job was project manager in maintenance, and that was in headroom, so a brilliant job. We had huge amounts of money to spend, how things change. Then I moved into the off-track engineer's post. So at the time, it was a trial post. So I was there for 2 years on a secondment to see what it's like, taking all the off-track assets and moving them into their own specialist engineer. And that was great. And that was made permanent, possibly due to the effects of Carment and the acknowledgement of the risk that's held there and how that needs to be managed. And then I've moved to HME Motherwell, where I am currently, because, well, deep down we all want to be a track engineer, don't we? So this is a very simple cross-section of a railway. So personally, even though I've held roles in off-track and track, I find it very easy to just get focused on what we do. You just speak to other engineers in your discipline, you work on your own thing, and so you should, that is your job. But we with minimal interface, there's benefits to be gained from taking the blinkers off and looking at the wider system there. So off-track, in a way, is quite simple. There's a vegetation standard that manages vegetation, there's a boundary standard that manages boundaries, and there's a drainage standard that manages drainage. You don't need to know these, you don't need to know them inside and out, you don't need to go to the standards briefs, there's just a requirement for an awareness for them. Like I said, I was the off-track engineer, and then that was made permanent, and it was brought to the other routes as well. Just looking on the org chart, it was managed very differently in different routes and regions, but looking as it is now, it seems like it is a lot more uniform, except northwest and central. Don't know what's going on there. Maybe we can ask afterwards. But yeah, everywhere else, we're reporting into the off-track engineer. So comments. So we've heard a lot about Carment there, the risks and the impacts. And I've just picked out a couple of passages from the report and some of the objectives, some of the recommendations from that hopefully are leading into maintenance, that things we can take away. Firstly, this passage was around Network Rail not learning from previous 11 earthwork failures of debris being deposited onto the railway. And the recommendation here was for, as it says, previous events had not been applied efficiently, and we were to identify and implement the lessons learned. Now, what we learned from Carment, one of the outputs from that is that we're going to manage drainage as a system. So inflow to outflow, we were going to keep it together, and it was going to sit under the off-track engineer. That's how we managed it in Scotland. So great, we've had an incident, we've got some learning from that, we've implemented it. We've decided in Scotland we needed around 25 extra staff to do this. 8 of them was to sit in the delivery unit where I work. So we resourced them, bringing in 8 extra heads, and then 7 heads were removed for modernising maintenance. So yeah, they ended up with 1 staff member. So we've learned a lesson, and then financial constraints and other reasons we've disregarded it. So the second part here was that the drainage assets weren't in ellipse. So the recommendation was that as-built from our deliverers needs to be uploaded into ellipse and handed over to the maintainer. So effect on maintenance for us, there we go, was that works delivery were asked to carry out drainage surveys to find all of these assets that have been installed in track but aren't in the system and aren't being maintained. And that's still ongoing. And what you can see here is a Power BI dashboard for Scotland route, and you can see we have the key information is up here. Before the survey, we had around 44,000 drainage assets in Scotland, and that has found another 31,000. So our drainage assets have increased by 70% in maintenance. We've got one guy to carry out all these extra work and extra inspections, so he's busy. So that the current as-built handling, I think my batteries are running low, is managed through the TEF process. And that's quite a good process. It's quite robust. We have dedicated staff in the DU to deal with that. The deliverers have staff as well. So we're quite happy with that process and how everything is getting uploaded now. Is the information complete and correct? Generally, yes. Sometimes there's optional information that isn't required. But for completeness, we would like that's sometimes missed, but generally it's pretty good. But then when you look at the assurance of that process, it's solely reliant on one member of staff in the delivery unit, so our system support. For us, it's Alan. Now, Alan is great, but if he's off, if he's on holiday, if he's not, misses an email, it goes to junk folder, then there is no other process there to check that will be gone and that asset is not recorded. So on the Swiss cheese model, we've just got one slice left there, and it is Alan, and it will be the same for yourselves. So that got me thinking about how we work in track. In track maintenance, how are the current as-builts handled? So we don't do large-scale works in track maintenance a lot, but we do some. We did 2.10s, associated IBJs, changing stretchers from fixed to adjustable recently. And there are no as-builts. There is no AMP process for this work. We're doing it ourselves. The work orders we put in do not update ellipse, so nothing's getting changed there. We need to do bulk track update forms and send that to our system support, which is very rarely done. And for changing assets, we just have to send emails to the system support. Again, if you're changing IBJ from a site built IBJ to a factory glued, or your new stretcher bars, etc., changing position of them, then that is not getting captured in ellipse, and it's not going to cause an incident like Garment probably, but it might cause more scoping shifts to be required because you've not got poor data quality. It might cause jobs to fall down on site because you've not got the right information during the planning stage. Yeah, so the information, is it complete and correct? Depends. A lot of this is getting missed. And assurance, there is no assurance for this. There's not even the AMP process. So yeah, something I think there is an area for us to improve on in maintenance there. One of the ideas we had looking at this was integrating systems, and that's a way to sort of bring this together and for improvement. I was speaking to our colleagues in One Big Circle earlier on about how can we use the AVA data to find IBJs in the track that aren't in ellipse and vice versa. And they've actually already done a project in one of the routes that is available. They could do that for your route as well with additional funding, but the process is set up there. And the findings was that the data was correct around 80% of the time. So 20% of your IBJs are either in ellipse and not in track, or in track and not in ellipse, which I think is quite a large amount. Okay, so moving on to the direct interfaces, drainage. When I was off-track engineer, this is one of the major interfaces I had with drainage. This is the Union Canal between Glasgow and Edinburgh. It washed out and it took away a big chunk of the track with it. Now, this isn't something that we're going to deal with day to day, and it's very difficult to manage that. But a more realistic example I've got shown here. So this is Shotts Golf Course, a golf course in Scotland, I know, but it is one of our most difficult drainage management sites. So the track's the lowest point. It's a frequent standing water site. The drainage isn't suitable in size or in gradient. There's no easily available outfall to reach. It's a large catchment area with a lot of runoff from the golf course, which brings a lot of sand and silt into the railway. That blocks the pipes, fouling the ballast. Ballast gets rounded, have the pumping action, and then the ballast isn't free draining anymore, causing wet beds. It's a super ridge geometry site. There's cyclic top, which we've got an ESR TSR on for at the moment. So the main learning point from this is, even though I've been in the off-track crawl, when drainage issues start to impact track, it's easy to want to take it in as your own. So we put the walls up and right, we're taking this over now, which is what we did here. I was arranging site visits with the off-track RAM team, not involving our off-track department. I was taking on arranging the Vactor, the pumping plans, the enhanced maintenance regimes of the drainage. So my main advice here would just be to really bring in the off-track team and utilize their knowledge and experience, because this is something that they deal with a lot. Their job is to manage the root cause of a lot of our problems. So we need to interface with them to make sure that that's happening. So let them manage their asset and support them in the best way we can. And also to be wary of tying in third-party drainage into track drainage. As we know, track drainage often perforated with a geotextile or some free draining, sitting in a free draining material. And a lot of that's to keep out fines and silt and sand and things. So if we put third-party drainage straight into it without having the gradient for it to be self-cleaning, then that blocks up very quickly and requires enhanced maintenance, which is often that's often the solution that is suggested during renewals for these sort of problems. Okay, next up, vegetation. So, crop around vegetation. Firstly, I want to speak about leaf fall. So, the off-track have a vegetation management strategy, and it does look at track. It looks at track criticality, but they mainly look at the track category. There is an option for you to feed back to them about operational risk and operational capacity, and where tracks that may not be high track cat, but it would be beneficial for them to move up their renewals clearance enhancements for. And feedback about areas of poor adhesion and where the railhead treatment train is affecting your access. So, I mean, it depends on the area, but we've had great success in removing the need for the railhead treatment train by removing vegetation to lower the adhesion risk, and then introducing manual intervention, be it MOMs or our own staff, and then depending on the pathing of the RHTT, we'll be able to move that out of the way to not affect our autumn access. Next up, invasive species. It's great to see, as an off-track engineer, it's great to see track people engaged and feeding back to you. Invasive species are one that's right in your face often, so yeah, it's great to feed them back. I would say check the hazard directory before you do. Check the pack when you're working, when you've spotted them. If it's in there, it's probably getting treated. If it's not, then great, let's feed it back. TDDs, so dangerous trees. Again, an awareness that trees, although they are line side, they can encroach into the track support zone, and everything that's in the track support zone should be of our concern. During a recent storm event, we were, this was towards the end of the storm event, we were just wrapping up really, and we got a report of a small tree that had fallen over, leaving a small hole behind. So it was near the depot, so a few of us went out with some shovels just to fill it in as a short-term fix. And then we got there inside, the shovels weren't big enough. So yes, the tree's fallen, it's taken away the ballast shoulder, it's taken away the support from the sleeper ends, and it's put the troughing root into the hedge. So yeah, there needs to be an awareness that, yeah, the vegetation is interacting with the track support zone, so an awareness of where are the dangerous trees that the off-track keep records of. They'll know and they'll be able to highlight those risks for you. And finally, vegetation effect on CRT. So this is a chart of a CRT site. We've got a remote monitor. There's got quite a lot of vegetation cover. So you can see it builds slowly throughout the day as it's not in direct sunlight. This is the same site with some vegetation removed, and you can see it spikes sharply as it gets morning sun, and then it gradually tails off. It's very difficult to compare these things because no 2 days are the same, cloud cover, etc. And it's more of an awareness that you can get a great variance in readings on your CRTs while it's actually the same condition. So removing a couple of trees is not really going to affect the stress in the rail unless it's done over a long length. So large-scale vegetation removal is something you need to be aware of for raising the risk on CRTs. Small-scale sites, well, it's not going to change the stress in the rail. It is going to could impact your readings. Okay, and finally, we're going to look at boundaries. So, as a track discipline, we see the track more than anyone else. Overhead's always looking up. S&T are always looking at the cabinets or at the floor. We cover smaller areas than the off-track do, so we've got the best local knowledge. So signs of trespass and changes in land use are things that do affect off-track's frequency of inspection, so any of these things they want to know about. Animal incursions, it's often a joint response where that falls between the two disciplines. Some areas have an off-track on call, some don't. It's just whoever's closest to respond. So when I was the off-track engineer, one thing that was raised through our union reps was an uncomfortableness working around animals. So they do a lot removing animals from the line or walking the fence lines for their inspections. So there was no courses available, so we managed to connect with a local farming college, the SRUC. They were really great. They built a course for us that we got the guys to attend. Sorry, guys and girls. It was half with the animals, half in the classroom. It cost £400 for 20 people. That's not each, that's for 20 people. And yeah, it's a brilliant course. That was then expanded, mainly due to we had a track staff on call, gone to remove a cow from the line. It chased him rather than him chasing the cow, and he went down the embankment. So after that, we put our track on-call staff on it as well. So yes, it has been expanded. Yes, spend time on the farm and animals. I think it's actually been brought into the training catalogue now, and it is just done classroom, which is a slight shame. But just an awareness that if there's things like this that there isn't training available for, you can reach out and you can look to create these yourself or see what's available in the training catalogue. Okay, so just to summarise, what does the off-track engineer want from you? They want help managing the symptoms of where an off-track fail. That's the main thing they're requiring from you. Changes in land use and trespass to use your local knowledge, where drainage is affecting your asset. Not all sites, just where it's the root cause is drainage, and reports of vegetation management, etc. And what are we looking for from them? What should we demand from them? We need to demand them to take charge of root causes. Stop water reaching the track, that's huge. Water ingress is the main cause of our issues with formation. Their lethal management needs to be strategic and to align with our priorities, and we need clear communication about emerging risks and feedback after they've carried out large-scale works. So I'll just leave you with key learning points that we've got from the slides I've talked through today. Some work to do on ellipse. Lots of the drainage assets are being found, but they're not all there being known and maintained quite yet. And yeah, the interface with off-track there can affect the track support zone, and their plans can be influenced by us. Thank you very much.